If you or a loved one are suffering from addiction or alcoholism, I'm here to tell you that there is help out there, even when it doesn't seem that way. You can attend or call the many great anonymous groups in your local community, or, of course, the SAMHSA Drug Addiction National Hotline found at 1-800-662-HELP. They provide free referral service in both English and Spanish 24 hours a day, as well as other information about drug addiction. There are hundreds of books, websites, and other resources, as well as joining us right here on Simply Difficult. This show is not affiliated with AA, NA, or other anonymous groups, just provides another safe place to listen, learn, and recover together. Me, I'm not a licensed professional. My name is Sam Speck, and I, too, am in recovery. I just have a microphone and a will to help myself and others recover. Through this program, we will bring on guests, including professionals in addiction counseling, psychology, and other recovering addicts sharing their advice, stories, and experience through addiction. Shows will be 1 hour long in a variety of big book work, step work, spiritual reading interpretation, DBT training, and professional advice interviews, as well as trying to normalize the simply difficult conversation you need to have with a loved one, or more importantly, yourself. What's up, and welcome in. Another edition of Simply Difficult here, streaming so far on YouTube, SoundCloud, hopefully to be over as many different platforms as we possibly can. But again, for now, just upon the freebie ones, and just another free, opportune space for addicts and those alike, or maybe those curious looking from the outside in, can find another safe place to listen, learn, and recover together. This is a recovery podcast. I never claimed to be a professional by any means. As you heard there in the intro, I too am in recovery. We have a guest on today as well who finds himself within recovery, so we've got a good program today. So as we always do, we'll break it down with how it works here in just a moment. For those that are new, we kind of have the basic construct of what an AA meeting looks like. So we will definitely go through how it works. We'll have our Serenity Prayer. We'll take a moment of silence for those still suffering. We'll take a look through some big book today, the AA big book, some spiritual readings out of a Cocaine Anonymous book, and a couple of spiritual readings as well that our guest and I will take some interpretations on for our journeys. Because, again, everybody's journey is different, and it varies on a multitude of different things, whether it's drugs, whether it's sex, whether it's acts, whether it's a hobby of yours that you just, and I don't want to necessarily say being addicted to a hobby is a bad thing, but having those addictive traits may be dangerous down the line if you were to turn that onto something else. So, but again, me personally, addicted to drugs and alcohol, as is our guest today, so that will kind of be, a little bit more of what the show is. We're going to try and bring on some addiction counselors, others through psychology as well, other addicts suffering through their times as well. So we're going to try and get you as much of a variance as possible, also while kind of having it feel like an AA meeting. So those that haven't been to an AA meeting, you can walk into one comfortable, and it can be an easy step for you going from even just listening on your couch here to Simply Difficult to actually being a part of a meeting and turning your life around. So this is Simply Difficult. I'm your host, Sam Speck. I, too, am an addict and an alcoholic. We got a lot to get to today. Again, as I'd mentioned, big book work, CA book, and some readings as well. And we've got a guest on today. First time throughout the program, as we've a little bit behind, of course, so we'll have a catch-up. We'll have a double episode coming up, but here for our first one, we will have a guest coming up here in just a moment. But as we always do, before we read the Serenity Prayer and take a moment of silence, introduce our guests, let's figure out how it works.
Here's how it works.
Folks, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates, and they're not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They're naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take these certain steps. And some of these we did balk. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, our own way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we're dealing with drugs and alcohol, cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without help, it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power, and that one is God. And may you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon, and here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Step number 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, became to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Number 3, made a decision to turn over our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves for 4. And number 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6 includes entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of characters, and 7, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. Then 8 and 9 include making a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all, followed by 9, making those direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when you would do so, injuring them or others. Number 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when wrong, promptly admitted it. Number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we know him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And the final step, having a spiritual awakening. As the result of these prior steps, we tried to carry this message to other alcoholics and addicts to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What in order? I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We're not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. Good stuff. Again, that is page 58 in the big book. There's different sizes to it. There's like the actual size, that's page 58 through 62, and then the intermediate size. I think it varies just a little bit, but page 58 is where How It Works takes place. So you can read along with that if you would like. Just a little thing I produced a while ago. I figured it would be easiest to kind of get that 4 minutes out of the way. But again, it's important. That's structure, and that's something, again, if you follow very strictly, it has a proven fact behind it. It has helped millions and millions of individuals outside of me, outside of close people of mine that I have seen personally, but helped millions of people if you, again, follow along with these steps very dedicated wise, and you put recovery first. And that's a big thing that we're going to get to today, and a big kind of topic that our entire really show is about today is put your recovery first. You're not alone. Never give up with it. So before we get into things, let's start with this. Let's start with our serenity prayer and a moment of silence. We'll actually do a moment of silence first, and then you can follow me in the serenity prayer if you would like. So a moment of silence for those still suffering. And you can follow me if you would like. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Hello, I'm Sam Speck, and I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. Welcome in. Again, this is Simply Difficult. And we've also got ourselves a guest today. And go ahead and introduce yourself. We'll obviously give a background story, but Mark from Colorado. Mark, good evening.
Hello, this is Mark Davis, or Mark from Colorado, and I'm here on the show.
There you go. Well, Mark, it's very good to have you here. Actually, a very good close friend of mine, and honestly, lots of stories that we could go behind, but at the same time, I think you and I have a unique kind of look in at this stage of the show that we are at, because you and I are both very early on into the recovery process, and we're both just trying to grasp on to this recovery process and actually turn it and change it into long-term recovery. We've had our relapses, we've had our struggles, we've had our difficult times, but then at the same time, we also have a unique look at things as well right now, because you and I personally, we go back. Now, again, Mark from Colorado, that's all we'll keep it from. My anonymity is out the window, and again, for those listening out there, you might have some similarities, but something to take away from these conversations as well. So let's just kind of go ahead and recap our last couple of weeks. Obviously, it's been a couple of weeks since we've caught up with you here on Simply Difficult. I do apologize. My schedule is unfortunately a little bit hectic now that it has changed. It's changed for the better. Obviously, I did this move and I did this change for my recovery, but it is a little bit hectic, especially around the weekends. So I might try and move the show or the recordings maybe to Friday and work a little bit ahead on there. But at the same time, so we do have a double feature coming at you, and we do apologize. We're a little bit late with that, but we'll go ahead and reflect on these last couple of weeks. So again, starting off as we always do, I'm Sam. I'm an alcoholic, and my last couple of weeks have been pretty good. I will say I've stayed clean. That's the best part. To the purest form and to the purists out there, I still smoke, a little bit of marijuana, actually quite a bit of marijuana. So I don't want to necessarily say I'm 100% clean. I'm purist clean, but at the same time, from hard opiates, from heavy drinking alcohol, from the dangerous hole that I was falling myself into, I can certainly say I'm now over 2 months clean from both of those. I was even further than that when I first got out of rehab, and then the relapse that we went over the last couple of weeks. But at the same time, it feels good to be over 2 months. It's exhausting with the job that I have. I'm trying to find a different shift because I'm working overnights right now. And to be honest, that is kind of helping me keep my mind off of things, because I'm so exhausted. I basically get home from work and there's I have nothing else to do. But at the same time, that's not the life I want to live. I want to be able to go outside. I want to be able to have energy, to not be tired all the time. So I am looking for a different shift, kind of looking for something different. But at the same time, my mind is straying away. I'm not really thinking about it. However, and I don't know, as we'll pass it off to you here, Mark, but, I've had some pretty wild dreams, and the sleeping process, I guess, maybe it's not the dreams for you, maybe it's insomnia, maybe it's not getting to sleep, maybe it's not getting enough sleep. But for me, the hardest part in the recovery process is the kind of getting a good night's sleep. And whether that's restlessness, whether that is a weird dream. I've been having very vivid using dreams recently, but the sleep part, and then trying to get into a routine, trying to do that. So that's kind of been a difficult part for me, Mark. But overall, the last couple of weeks have been pretty positive. How's the last couple of weeks been for you, my man?
Thank you, Sam. Past couple weeks have been ups and downs completely. About 3 weeks ago, my grandpa, that was very close to me, passed away, and my first thought was to go back and drink as much as I could, because that's what happened when my grandma passed away a few years ago, when I was still an active alcoholic, and I chose to handle this in a different situation. But I still did, because I went through a little bit of my past is I went through rehab last year, and I got sober, and then I figured out that I could drink moderately. But that's what alcoholism is. We're all alcoholics. That's, some people figure it out, some people don't. And my first choice was to go back to the bottle, and I chose not to. And then recently, also with recoveries, I got a job offer that would put me back in the place where I would want to be with work. I was going to be an arborist, and I used to work for the city of Loveland as a forester, and then I lost that job because of my alcoholism years back, and I found a job that I could start a career with again, do something I loved, and it didn't work out, and it was because of my past, literally. And if I was not an alcoholic and did not do those decisions in my past, I would have my dream job and I would be moving forward with my life. And because of my past, I am having to make changes and have to readjust and have to continue on with my life as much as everyone else is. And it's just a knockdown that we alcoholics and drug addicts take because of our past and our choices that we have made in our past that affect our future. And and I'm paying for it still till this day. after being 2 years clean off of hard drugs, and I've had some slip ups in between. And last year I went into rehab for alcoholism, but I'm not going to let that knock me down. I'm going to keep on moving forward. That's my biggest motto with this.
There you go, and actually a perfect segue into what we're going to look into here first today, because it was a conversation that we had off of the air, just kind of this whole idea that life is going to continually kick you down, and it really is. And to be honest, like we were saying before, that we got on the podcast here, is that really the most successful people are usually the ones that have been kicked down the most. However, they've turned that into a positive energy, and instead of relishing on it, and instead of turning over to the easy side, because the addiction is the easy side, the giving up is the easy side, being able to say, oh, just not going to do that anymore because it's too hard, is the easy way out. Now, again, it's, no shame to you. I've taken the easy way out many, many of times. However, recovery, there is no easy way out. This is the one way that you're going to have to do it for long-term recovery. You have to never give up. And you have to also believe that you're not alone. Now, I know there's a lot of instances. I have felt alone. I felt very isolated. I'm sure you have felt alone. Obviously, for those that are here on the camera, I keep looking over here. We've got our guest on the on the camera over here, so I'm not looking into oblivion. But, you're really not alone, because there is this fellowship that we have to go to with his AA, or here on Simply Difficult, or whichever anonymous group that you choose to go to. Maybe it's inpatient, whatever hospitalization that suits you. Taking that, as we've had on this, program before in episodes 1 and 2, we said that step 1 is a 2-part process. It's not only realizing, but then it's initiating action to realizing what is happening. And maybe that's even starting as simple as cutting back a little bit. But hey, that realization is there. You know it's there, and then you start putting it into action. And that's what that full step 1 is. But as you're going through, it's going to be difficult. I'm not even very far into recovery, and if you talk about long-term recovery. Neither is our guest here, because I know him personally. But at the same time, I know individuals that are 10, 15 years, 20 years, maybe they've had 20 years sober. And that's a powerful thing. And I would love to have you on the program as well. We do have an email down below here. It's simply-difficult@outlook.com. We have a couple of birthdays today that we are going to celebrate, rebirth dates. So basically the explanation of that is if you have had a sober rebirth date within the 7-day period between shows, you can email me what that date is and we'll celebrate with you. But we got a couple of them today. Obviously, mine was last show. I got over 2 months recently. That's basically how you go 1 day, 1 month, all the way up to 12 months and a years beyond. So if you have a rebirth date, we'd love to celebrate with you. Simply-difficult@outlook.com. All right, let's give into this. It's a little bit of a reading here, but then you and I will both kind of interpret this reading and give, what has been our experience with this whole process here. So never give up. Most people who engage in addictive behaviors and go on to develop an actual addiction find out overcoming it is more challenging than they expected, even though the difficulties people have with quitting drugs are well known when people start using it. They often feel either that addiction is a myth, or they can quit at any time they want, or that there is an exception to the rule. This is even more true of non-substance or behavioral addictions involving activities such as excessive eating, sex, gambling, shopping, and exercise. Obviously, the difference, again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a substance or a liquor or something like that. And it's actually almost perfect into the reading that we have. Denial is thick. At the start of my drinking and drugging, it was fun. That's why we do it, right? In order for me to fit in with a society where drinking and drugging was socially acceptable, I had to do it. I was alive and finally comfortable in my own skin. I was on top of the world, and what could go wrong? Now, Mark from Colorado, I am glad that you're on with us today, because I don't know if you can look back for, again, kind of a unique look. When we kind of first started, it was never in our minds, and if anything, we kind of told ourselves we have the strength, we have the power to maybe be able to dabble into these things, do it a couple of times, have the fun and experiment in the way that we wanted to. But no, we're not going to actually get hooked onto things. We're not, maybe I'll smoke a couple of cigarettes, but I'm never going to actually be addicted to cigarettes. Oh, I tried Coke once, but I'm never actually going to do it on a daily basis. This started so long ago for us, was that denial period. And I think that denial period led up to what we are at now, because you and I have been in inpatient rehabs. We have been in and out of homes. We find ourselves, so you a little bit more with legal issues, because I have been incredibly lucky, because I'll tell you what, I don't know how I find myself lucky in legal, issues like this. I'll stop talking so I don't incriminate myself. But there's a lot of times where this style of life finds yourselves with tickets, find yourself with court cases, find yourselves with, unfortunately, things that keep you away from a profession, maybe for a year or two or an extended period of time, maybe forever. I don't necessarily know. But that denial period at the very beginning, you and I kind of talked about it a moment ago, and you're like, no, I never really had denial. But that was after that you knew how much that you were using. At the beginning, yeah, you and I were a very young age, at the very beginning of high school, by the way, at a very young age, but we were naive. We had straight denial. We completely believed how much that we were doing and what we were doing wasn't actually going to affect us. And I think that, I don't know if it's ego, but I think it's a level of almost... You got a chip on your shoulder for some reason. And I carried that into my addiction, because after a while, I became the guy that had a huge tolerance. It didn't matter how much that I used. I really wasn't the one that was going to slump over, or I wasn't the one. And that was bad. That was bad territory for me. And I think denial was a huge factor into the severity of where I'm at now. And for many of those out there, and Mark, again, I saw it in both of us. I haven't seen you in a few years personally with it. I'm sure you've accepted it now, because we know you've taken that first step. You've taken many steps, I believe, actually, through the AA program, but you've taken that first initial step, realizing and taking the initiative. But at first, I believe you and I both had kind of a naive deniability about it all.
Very much so, Sam. Especially when I was younger, the biggest thing with me with denial was, and me starting out with drugs and alcohol, was that I wanted to be cool and get along with people that were, popular, and, because I wasn't always the most liked kid growing up, and I've been hurt many times physically and mentally from other people growing up, and I thought that getting involved with, drugs and alcohol would be my way in with these people, that to make me less vulnerable, basically, and that could be a part of the group. And that's just that's a big part of denial, is thinking that these people actually like you, and that these people will love you because you will bring them drugs, you will bring them alcohol, and that is not true. The people that love you will stick by your side, but that's a big thing. But I denied being an addict. Mainly, I knew I was an alcoholic for the longest time, but an addict, that was the one thing I denied the most. I was be like, I use coke regularly, and damn well I know I used coke and crack every damn day,
Bro, you and I would sit in parking lots for hours, man. You and I would sit in fucking parking lots for 3-4 hours at a time, waiting for a bag. I can't even imagine. I mean, obviously, I left to follow my career path within radio. I grew up in northern Colorado, though, with Mark and a lot of our other counter friends as well. And unfortunately, Mark and I were kind of the ones that definitely, I think all of our friends are a little fucked up in a way, to be honest with you. But at the same time,
always,
you and I really kind of grasped onto that substance use. And I think, again, I never really necessarily had trouble making friends. However, it was like a shortcut. It was much easier to make friends for me when I was using, or when I was being social with it. And that's what I've always said, and it's the longest debate in the world, is marijuana a gateway drug? And I always say this with an asterisk, because I say no, but kind of, because at the same time, when I smoked weed for the first time, or when I really got high for the first couple of times off weed, I wasn't just automatically like, oh, fucking heroin or coke next, you know what I mean? However, the more houses and the more people that I went to go pick up weed from, the more people I started to meet and surround myself. So marijuana definitely introduces you to people that might have a bag of coke in their pocket, or that might have something in their sock, or might have something else. Marijuana surrounds you of the people that are going to get you into something else. It wasn't the feeling of marijuana that it was like, oh, fuck, I got to do this next. It surrounds you with sometimes the amount of, I say no, marijuana is not a gateway drug, with an asterisk, because again, hell, you and I smoked for years, and I don't know if you remember G's house. I mean, remember fucking G's
Oh,
house?
hell
Oh
yeah.
my god, dude, that was fucking the people that we would meet in that fucking place.
It was
We probably could have
weird.
gotten
Things were
anything.
weird. Things were sketchy.
I was
It was not
16
okay
fucking years
situation.
old, and I probably could have gotten anything at that point. But it was again, we kind of felt untouchable at that moment. You know, yeah, you and I had some run-ins with the cops and things that we actually got away from. Those are stories for a different day. But you know, we had some sketchy moments, but it was almost like we were untouchable. I mean, it was, you know, who the fuck is going to stop us at this point, because we believe that we weren't the ones with the issue. Here's actually a good, you know, continuing on to the reading with this. As my using days continued, my so-called friends began failing in life, losing jobs, lying, stealing, run-ins with the police, and severe illness became regular occurrences. Personally, at the time, I couldn't figure out why these people had chosen to do these things. What in the world was wrong with them? Denial is thick, and although my own addiction was progressing, I didn't correlate any of these behaviors with people getting into trouble or getting so ill from their use. So, again, this is what I mean. When you start to surround yourself with more and more people, that should be an immediate kind of sign that, you know, I'm surrounding myself and denying the fact that there is more and more people around me that might introduce something worse to me. So, again, at the very beginning, I did deny what I was. You know, I didn't want to necessarily say, and when people would point it out, it was so bizarre because when I was with my friends, when I was with people that used and things like that, I would always say, oh, yeah, like I can do this amount, or yeah, I can put that down to act cool. And then somebody from the outside looking in, you know, they would say, oh, man, you did that much coke this weekend? And I would say, no, I didn't do that. Like, I had no, you know, I didn't do that amount or anything like that. And again, it was almost a two-life persona that I started to build up. It was almost just a difficult type of, you know, image that I tried to hold for as long as I possibly could. And it was difficult. And I think that it kind of tied into that and probably many of those out there as well. So, Mark, let's continue on with this reading. Never give up. You're not alone. What makes the situation even more complicated is that for every addictive behavior, there is some people who are able to engage in the behavior without developing an addiction. Now, this was almost actually what we were just talking about. We have, a friend group, probably if you were to break it down, of 10 to 15 people, right? Yeah, we have our core group of friends that are solid, maybe 3 to 4 of us, 4 to 5 of us, something like that. But our friend group in general, 10 to 15 people that we would solidly, you know, hang out with on a regular basis or use with or whichever. And unfortunately for them, you know, they got to see the rabbit hole that we dove down because as many of us, I think, within the anonymous group, we call them normies. Their brain didn't change in the way that our did. I struggle with the word disease. I like the word allergy a little bit better. However, I just, you know, when you surround yourself with other people, I think that is what ties in with deniability, is because, oh, why didn't my 13 other friends suffer with this as well? Am I the only one that am suffering with this? And that's why I think you and I have a bonding moment within that, because we did have a group of about 10 to 15 people who had their own struggles, but you and I really, unfortunately, kind of hid, but also, again, were most impacted by it. And again, how did surrounding yourself, we didn't have quite a few friends that used, but at the same time, none of them really gravitated and none of them were really affected in the way that we were. Did that affect you in any way?
Very much so. Just saying that most people don't give a shit about you. They don't care about your health. They don't care about your state of mind. All they care about is their next high. And they will take advantage of you with that. They'll make you believe that they're your friends. And it's till after you realize you have a problem and you say you have a problem, you're trying to get healthy, and the people that let you go and they don't support you with what your decision is, you really realize who your true friends are. In my opinion, it's like you hold on to the people closely that support you and will help you in that, and those are the people that will carry you to where you need to be. But this is why I'm still with the girl that I'm with, and she's an alcoholic as well, but she supports me and she would die for me, like, and you know, and like those are the people that you need to keep close to you. Sam would die for me, like the person that's on here right now, and like those are the people you need to hold close to you and believe, and that's what will happen. And but the other people in your life, as soon as you tell them about recovery and you're not going to get them drugs or get them alcohol or get them anything, they stop hanging out with you, you really realize who's close to you and who's not. Also, I just want is like who is going to be close to you and who will stick by your side if you choose to do this path, basically.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. And to be honest with you, if you look at the overall structure of this show, I really want the overall conversation between maybe an addict and a family member, or maybe two people that really don't know from the outside looking in what's going on. But at the same time, I want this conversation about addiction, about drug use, to not correlate with a violent crime or to not correlate with a criminal. I hate the fact that all of a sudden, if you say that, oh man, so-and-so from wherever is a drug addict now, oh, straight criminal, can't hang around him. That's the way that the image immediately turns to. I don't find myself a criminal. However, looking back, I definitely did some criminalistic acts. Absolutely. That's in my past, but I have changed, I have grown, and I have put forth a lot of effort into making myself better, into my career, into my work, into making myself better individually. And I don't find myself to be a criminal, even though I've used drugs for the last decade, maybe even more than that. And I hate that the conversation has immediately turned nowadays like you are talking to a convict, like you're talking to a criminal. Just because some of them have been to jail doesn't make that their image. Some people do accept the jail image. They really do, because they're going to be in there for life, or they're going to be in there for years and years, and they have to accept that. But, yeah, Mark, I agree with you. And actually, Mark, you almost took the words right out of this next sentence. It says, most people who think they are one of the lucky few who will not get hooked and unfortunately do not realize the truth until it's too late. By the time they recognize the time for change, they may not even want to. It can take years of being faced with negative consequences of addiction before realizing that of it causing significant problems. So this goes into, again, never give up. And I don't necessarily know how much that you would like to talk about it. You brought it up a little bit there at the beginning here, but you and I have been punched in the gut. We've been taken down from our thrones. We've taken a nice step in the right direction, and because of our past or because of what we were currently doing within addiction, we had that taken away with us. For me personally, it was a big job of mine. You just mentioned it at the beginning as well. Again, you can't necessarily relish on that, and I think a good point to make was actually one that you heard from your sister is maybe, I'm not a too religious guy. I'm not a very spiritualistic guy by any means, but maybe what had happened was supposed to happen. Maybe there's a bigger message behind it. Maybe the fact that you still have a year on all of these tickets or a year on all this diversion or whatever it is was supposed to happen, and it's going to open up another opportunity. So I don't know how much that you'd like to talk about that, but at the same time, I feel like that message really resonates with me of what she said about, maybe these events are happening for a reason. Well, at least in the manner that they do. Yeah, it sucks at the time, and it's like a fucking punch to the nuts. You know what I mean? It sucks at the time, but at the same time, you can't give up, and you have to look at it in a more positive light.
Yes, definitely. You always have to look at things in a positive light, and the things that you will. If you keep dragging down on the things that are negative in your life, those things will drag you down. You have to focus on positive, what you have and what you still have and what you can build on, what you can grow on. And those are the things you have control over. Like I'm just, yeah. My girl just left to go drive because she was upset that I was doing a sober podcast because she's still an alcoholic, and she has yet to accept that she's an alcoholic and she has these issues, and she just left right now.
I can tell within your voice you're a little disturbed. I mean, I again, this is you've said your name by any means, but we don't necessarily know your face by any means. How are you feeling? Like, what is at the same time it's probably a little difficult because you've been in her shoes. You know that you need to be patient. You know that it's not going to be you that's going to influence her to realize that, because your parents. I think I even tried to tell you what was going on at many times. Our friends tried to tell you it many times, but I mean, you can only be so patient with those that you love, because you see the same deniability with an individual that was the same with you. And I don't mean to make this a raw subject, but I can tell that you're a little broken up all of a sudden, within the first 30 minutes here. And again, you can step aside whenever that you would like, but I feel bad. And that's again, you put yourself in your parents' shoes, It's kind of what they saw the hurt. They saw what it potentially was going to go through, but they didn't see any commit. Again, you got to be patient, and I believe that she'll do it if she's dedicated to it. You have to be the one that wants to change, and it's true.
I mean, the biggest thing with recovery is you need to focus on you, what you can do for yourself. It doesn't matter what, and like, you are number one. No one fucking else matters. Not your family, not your, no one. You cannot take any of those people into consideration. You have to focus on you and get yourself better. If you can't help them right now, you got to help yourself. Get yourself healthy. Get yourself better. Get yourself in a mental state where then you can help those other people. If you're trying to do that right now, it's not going to work. And right now it's happening with my girl. She doesn't want help right now, and she's going through it, and I'm walking her way through this step by step. Last week she tried sobering up, and she got down from leaving alcohol to bottles of wine. Like a couple glasses of wine a couple of nights, and then one night I accidentally slept when I was supposed to be watching her, and I woke up and she was drinking, and and it's sad watching those people. I can see where my parents went through, watching their child, and it's just,
it's tough, man.
It's not good.
It's tough, man. And we're going to give you a minute, actually. Again, that's Mark from Colorado. This is Simply Difficult. We're going to play you about 2 minutes of jazz music. How's that for you? 2 minutes of jazz. We're going to let him light up a cigarette. We're going to take a deep breath. That's the point of these things. We're about the 30-minute mark anyway, so we'll take a quick break. Again, we're going to stay here between you and I. We're going to let him smoke up a cigarette real quick, take a deep breath. If you'd like to continue on with us, then we'll continue with things. But again, this is the part that, even though I seem comfortable with this conversation, that's why I'm trying to do this show. I'm trying to normalize a very difficult part of maybe somebody's life. And maybe it's somebody that you care about more than you can possibly fucking fathom. Maybe it's somebody that you know like a child. And that's why I tried to put him in the shoes of his parents just now, is because that's exactly what they saw. And it's fucked. It really is. And the patience level behind parents that they have to their children is inconceivable to me, because I don't have a child yet. But we're going to take a quick step aside. We're going to let him light up a cigarette. I wish I could light one up in my apartment right now. Maybe I'll take a step aside. But a couple of minutes now. We'll be back here literally two seconds. 2 seconds. Listen to some good music. All right. Took a nice little breather there. We do appreciate your patience. This show, this is the reality of this show. This is a difficult conversation. It truly is. It's difficult for me, and that's one reason. And an inspiration. It's not necessarily a selfish inspiration behind the show, but I truly do this show to help others while also helping me, because this forces me to talk about these items. Otherwise, I will not. And a lot of things come up, and unfortunately today we have a pretty raw subject that has come up even within our program, within our guests that we are having. Mark from Colorado, we appreciate you sticking around. We really do. We don't necessarily have to go in depth. We don't have to go by any means, but at the same time, it really does go hand in hand with our program today, because there's going to be a lot of distractions. And I know emotionally you're a little torn up right now, but at the same time, it's, recovery comes first. And I know she's probably pretty torn up emotionally, or maybe at the same time, the reason why she's emotionally torn up right now is because she is starting to realize that there might be something there, or there might be something wrong. And, maybe that's scaring her. Maybe that's something that she doesn't necessarily want to realize, because look at the traumas or look at the past that she has had. You've told me very little about it, but the surrounding of methamphetamine, the amount of drugs that might be around, or the amount of alcohol use that might be around, it was only natural really for her to kind of follow within that. And I think it scares her because that makes her feel at home, and you're trying to do something different. And I just, I know it's maybe it feels like a gut punch because she left of what I was doing, but at the same time, your recovery comes first, and it truly does. And I think she will realize that one day, and maybe she's kind of realizing that right now. Again, no names are having to be used. We've kind of given you the backstory with it, but Mark, at the same time, like you said, recovery comes first, regardless of who's talking or who's bringing it up.
Yes, definitely. And it's recovery affects everyone differently, in my opinion. It affected my parents differently, affected my friends, everyone differently, and that's just something that comes with it. It's making that choices that will alter your life to ultimately the better for yourself. And some people react differently to it and will be enthused by it and want to do things for themselves, and other people, they will take offense by it, and they don't know what to do in themselves because they're thinking that they don't deserve this, or they don't belong in this, and absolutely they do. Like, it just takes what time is the right moment. If you're ready to accept who you are and what is wrong with your life, and you want to make a better change, then do it. If not, then keep fucking up your life. But the thing with me, Sonia, is it's like I'm doing better things for myself. I was an alcoholic. I stayed sober for over 6 months. And then I relapsed, and then was sober for 3 months. And then I went back, and I was able to control my drinking, which I have been. I was sober for 3 days last week, and then drank one day, which was Thursday, and then didn't drink Friday. And then I have, had a couple drinks the next day. But it's just, it's figuring out yourself and figuring out what works for you and what people will accept. And because Sonia, she's used for us being alcoholics together, and it's just, and the fact that I'm trying to better myself and be healthy, and that's like, she takes that as offense. But you need to not let those people disturb you for what your true purpose is, which is taking care of yourself and you.
No, absolutely. And I know it's, sometimes difficult, especially with those ones that you love the most. And I hate to put you in the shoes of those, but at the same time, I kind of look at this because this could be, you'd mentioned, you had a couple of days that slip up or whichever, but at the same time, is this something emotionally that could be a trigger to you? And that's also something, maybe you out there, that could be a realization, is you have to step back. And I know it's a major trigger for me. Maybe it's an argument that a loved one and I had, or maybe it's disappointment that comes over me. I immediately turn it into a reason to maybe go out and use. Now, I don't necessarily want to say that today is the day, go out and feel this, but at the same time, within the last couple of 15, 20 minutes or so, it really has seemed like your attitude has changed a bit. I just don't want this to be a major trigger to you. And I'm glad that we're in the setting that we are, because it is kind of like an AA setting. It is somewhere where you can speak out upon these things and it not become a trigger, because you're going to meet a lot of triggers when you come out. And it could be as simple as this. This was not an argument that was made. This was not a fight. This was not something domestic. This was truly off of two people being in a different place spiritualistically. We have an individual that's joined us today that spiritually is already accepted who he is. However many steps or many slip-ups that he made, he has accepted who he is, and his counterpart has quite not yet. It's as simple as that, and it is a major emotional turmoil that sometimes both of them are going through. Now, check in, make sure that she's okay, make sure that everything is all right, but maybe this is kind of a good sign, because if she wasn't broken up, if she wasn't emotional right now, then that means she wouldn't be feeling anything. And she's thinking about this. Again, the childhood that she was surrounded with, or maybe the people that she was surrounded with growing up, that feels like home to her, it feels like. And now that you're stepping away from that, I think it's freaking her out. But at the same time, it's also kind of inspiring her, because she wouldn't have gotten emotional had she not been thinking about it, in my mind. Now, I don't know what she's thinking about right now, but I think personally...
That's exactly what it said.
Yeah.
Agreed upon, Sam. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think, again, she's just, I don't want to say scared by any means, but it is a scary thought to put into your mind that, hey, maybe I am at that level by any means. And that is the biggest step, is just kind of accepting it. It's just knowing, and it might take me years to really fully grasp the long-term recovery aspect. You've been through multitudes of relapses. I'm trying to stay away from the hard things and have relapsed on weed and the small things, but at the same time, in a grand scale of things, that's still relapsing, that's still going back into my addictive personality. So in the long sense of things, I'm very fresh. And I'm very new into this process. And again, I'd love to have you on the program if you're a long-term recovering addict, 20, 15, 10, 5 years, doesn't matter, simply-difficult@outlook.com. Our guest today just happens to be in the same shoes as I. We're very fresh out. It's kind of an interesting look because of where we're at in the shows right now, early on in the episodes. And kind of an interesting look. Again, I don't mean to put a magnifying glass on your life, but this is something that a lot of people could relate to, because, again, it seems like the thought is there in her head. And like you said, it comes down to that individual making that decision at that time. Are they ready to make the step to get better? And a lot of times, I mean, for me, especially in the last year and a half, I was not ready. I knew damn well what the fuck was going on. I was drinking at least a 750 a day, at least a couple of pints. And then the new location that I started getting to, it was opiates plus alcohol. It was an absolute mess. And I knew with the amount of party that was going on within one individual's house that there was a problem. But I didn't want to accept it because of the situation. I had a good career, had a good life. Everything seemed good. Pink clouds and everything. It was masked. It was a complete fucking mask. And I think there's something that's kind of guarding her realizing it. And again, I know you're emotional right now, and I don't mean to be pushing that on you, but this is something, especially if you two are going to be around and together for a long time, this is a good thing. You want her to get better, correct?
Yes, most definitely. And again, that's always up to the person's decision to make that. You cannot force them. All you can do is support them and offer up advice. But that's all you can do until that person is willing and able to make that decision. That's the only way that they will get better. Otherwise, all you can do is support them and walk them through that and hold their hand, and hopefully they will have a time where they want to make themselves better.
And I want some parents to kind of take in, or maybe individuals or loved ones out there to kind of take in the gravity of that last statement, because it might be years. It really, truly might be years. And you might be the literal last thing that somebody is grasping onto. And I hate to say that because it sounds like a responsibility to an individual. And you don't hold responsibility over someone else. You don't. You don't have a responsibility to pick up if somebody's having a bad day or because they've made their own decisions. But at the same time, as a loved one, if you truly love and care for that someone, if they're going through this addiction, you need to realize the gravity of maybe how severe it might be in someone's case. It might take years. It might take months. It might take one instance. I thought after my first overdose that was going to be it. I'm 2 years after it now, and we're still where we're at. There's things that you think. There's things that you think happen, but what?
Yeah. Do you by chance have the reading on 417 acceptance reading?
Is it in the big book?
This is right in the big book, page 417, second sentence, and that is the main thing in AA that has gotten me through so many things in my life, because this is what I had the most problems with. Is
second paragraph about acceptance? Is that what it is?
Yes, sir. Yep,
all right,
it's all about acceptance.
Here's the reading. It is out of the big book, the AA book. Acceptance was the answer, page 417, if you'd like to follow along. Paragraph 2. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life, unacceptable to me. And I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens in God's world by mistake. Until I could accept my alcoholism, I could not stay sober unless I accept life completely on life's terms. I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as what needs to be changed in me and my attitudes. Mark, what do you get out of that reading?
That's what I get out of life right there. Like, that is what I live my life by, because that was the biggest thing that disturbed me and like messed me up, because I could not accept certain things in my life, and I cannot accept bad things that have happened. I cannot accept the way people live their lives. I was upset and I was pissed with people and I was pissed with myself. But until you can accept those person, places, or things, like, that's the only way you can move on with your life and be happy, you know?
Absolutely. And for me, it was, I'm my own worst enemy now that you say that, because I am so good at accepting a situation, right? When I am, with an adverse situation or something that is in front of me, I am very quick to act, whether it's, in a positive manner or whichever. Now, impulsivity comes back in a negative manner sometimes. However, for me, it was just how I acted to those things in life would eat at me later. Is because, I acted on it at the time and I was quick acting on it. But then later in life, I look back and I say, man, why the hell did I do it that way? Or why did I decide to do it this way? Or what could I have done different? And for some fucking reason, I sit back and I refuse to accept the past. And the past is something that I just cannot anyone can fathomably change. There's no possible way that you can go back and take the past away. And that for some reason I could just never accept life on life's terms in that manner, because I would look back on life, I would look at how I reacted to the situation I was faced with, and I just was disappointed. I wasn't happy with the way that I was up to it. And it was a difficult thing. I'm glad you brought up the reading. Again, 417, it's the acceptance reading, second paragraph down. It's a good one. Truly is. Truly is a good one. So we got a couple of minutes left here in today's program. So we will celebrate together, because through the email, again, simply-difficult@outlook.com, we do have ourselves a couple of rebirth dates. So we'll look back. It was on February 29th. So we've got a 16-year, just Brianna. That's it. No location. Brianna, 16 years of sobriety. Congratulations. That was back, again, on the 29th of February. If you have a rebirth date within the last 7 days or 7 days in between our previous show, then we'd really appreciate you coming on. Simply-difficult@outlook.com. Not coming on, but again, having those rebirth dates on there. So Brianna with a rebirth date. We've also got Kyle with 6 months. Kyle from California, 6 months. Congratulations there on 6 months. That was actually back on the 3rd, so very recently. back on the 3rd of March here recently. But let's see, do we have one more? As anonymous as you could get, just says 6 years. That's it, 6 years. Back on the... what does that say? The 21st. So February 21st, if you're the one that put that in, February 21st, 6 years ago, congratulations. No name, no location. Again, you can stay as anonymous at that, but we will celebrate your rebirth date right here on Simply Difficult. Well, we did, I don't know if it was a connection issue or, again, if it was just disconnected on his own terms. We've lost our guest from today, but at the same time, we really give a big thank you to that individual. He's a very close friend of mine, Mark from Colorado. We'll keep it as simple as that. But something very emotional happened today during the program. Something that is a legitimate, it's something that's going to happen. It is inevitable, an inevitability that is going to happen within your recovery process. And maybe it's somebody else that's trying to recover with you or looking from the outside in. There's just a lot of people that don't understand, and emotions overcome them. And it might seem like they're trying to run away from you. They're not. They're trying to want to run away from their thoughts that are running amok. Maybe they're not quite as informed. Maybe they're not quite as in tune to with what's actually going on within an individual. And that's what we're here for. We're trying to ease this conversation into everybody's everyday life. And whether it's talking with a loved one, your parents, maybe somebody that has completely no fucking clue what they're talking about with this, you need to be able to talk about it with somebody. And they're difficult things to talk about. You may get emotional. That's important. You have to use those emotions. I think it was back in episode 3 or 4, we were talking about emotion regulation. You need to find a great way to be able to tune those emotions when you feel them instead of diluting them or instead of being able to bury them in a substance or in a pathway, the easy way out, right? Something that we addicts and alcoholics have built into our brains, the easy way out, the easy path, the neuroplasticity that we have completely grinded into our brain at this point. Well, you can get it back. It's going to take a long time, and it's going to take a lot of dedication. But again, we thank our guest for joining us today, and we would like you to join us as well. You don't have to really get as specific with that. You can really just come on and talk about your last couple of weeks if you would like to. But simply-difficult@outlook.com. We'd love to have you here on the program. But really, that's all that we're going to go with. Let's go ahead and give you one spiritual reading before we get on out of here. We'll go with the 6th of March here. Let's see. All right, so the 6th of March. Actually, let's go back to right here, actually. 6th of March. Steps 1 and 2 unlocked. Almost perfect within the place that we're at within our program here, kind of on that change from step 1 to step 2. So step 1 convinced me that when it comes to cocaine or other, this is the CA book, cocaine or other substances and managing my life, I'm helpless on my own power. The utter desperation I felt when I got here and the unmanageability of my life were constant reminders that I need to continue on the recovery path. I was told that my first step must be worked perfectly if I'm to remain clean and sober. For me, this was not difficult. My experience is that I started grabbing another addict to share our stories about hitting rock bottom, no matter which drug or what our backgrounds was. Step 1 has proven to be the same for each of us in any anonymous groups, and it really is. It's, again, I'd like to say step 1 is a 2-part piece. It's that realization and then turning it into an initiative and finally moving. But what, for me, especially when my first time in inpatient rehab or at an AA meeting, when you finally start to talk to somebody and you start to relate with somebody, it's a good feeling. It truly is a good feeling. And that is, again, the moral of the story as we wrap things up here on Simply Difficult. Get yourself to an AA meeting, get yourself a sponsor. Maybe hospitalization, inpatient is what you need. This is your step. This is maybe your inspiration or maybe just another place for you to come back to and recover together. So we'll see you next week here on Simply Difficult. For now, we'll get you our show end. But again, get yourself some help out there, and we'll see you next week right here.
Hey, thanks again for joining me today. And see, an hour wasn't so bad. So get yourself to an actual AA meeting, rehab, or other anonymous groups. Meet a sponsor, new friends, and learn how to talk about this simply difficult journey to recovery. Because I know how difficult it is. When a substance dictates how good or bad your day is going to be, how it controls how you feel, and when it holds on to you, how you as a person changes. Dishonesty, manipulation, and no control of emotion. Well, I see you, and if it feels like nothing else can help, come join me next time on Simply Difficult.